the latest webinar in our series. My name is Ross Duncan. I'm Chief Marketing Officer for First Point USA, and we're delighted to be joined this evening by Johan Cedergren, who is the head coach for men's soccer at the University of Kentucky. Johan has been at Kentucky for 13 seasons now, so a lot of experience in that role. He was a player at University of Cincinnati and was captain of a very successful Bearcats team as well. I'm sure he'll touch upon that in due course. Had a spell of 5 seasons as assistant coach at Dartmouth University, working under his former coach, Jeff Cook, who's now at Penn State University. And we're delighted that Johan's joined us this evening. So our webinars really are designed to help educate you all, to try and help you gain a better understanding of life as a student athlete, soccer player at college at various stages of the pathway. Some of you may be clients of First Point, some of you may be kind of starting out in the program or kind of some way down the pathway. So hopefully some of Johan's insights and experiences that he's going to talk about will kind of be helpful for you, and you know, again, try and boost your knowledge and understanding of what it's going to be like when you hopefully head to soccer. So I'd like to welcome Johan. You're obviously in a very busy spell, busy part of the season with the games coming thick and fast. I guess we'll kick things off just by asking how your season's going at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Russ, and thanks for having me. I'm excited to spend some time with you guys tonight. You know, I think the season it's a challenging season. We have a lot of young guys, a lot of new guys. We've only lost 4 out of the 12 games that we've played, but we've also drawn 5. So we're working really hard on finding a way to turn some of those draws into wins. The good thing playing in the Sun Belt is such a competitive conference that we still have everything to play for in regards to getting into the conference tournament and then potentially making a run in the NCAA tournament as well. So it's a pleasure to be on here, and it's good timing because we're in between trips. We just got it back from JMU yesterday, and we're leaving for Orlando UCF tomorrow. So it's busy time for sure, but it's also the best time of the year, of course, is the fall, where you get to play some really, really competitive and meaningful games. So excited to do this.
Sounds good. And I guess starting things off, tell us a little bit about University of Kentucky.
Yeah.
For those that might not be familiar with it, if you kind of take us through the facilities, the sports campus, and the program specifically as well.
Yeah, so we got to be a little careful in regards to compliance rules of what you can and cannot do in regards to recruiting presentation. But I think all of this information, of course, is available online. You know, I've been here for 13 years. I was incredibly fortunate to get my first head coaching job at Kentucky. I think a lot of people are, you know, that you have to get through 2, 3, 4 jobs before you land at a place like Kentucky. So fortunately enough, I was able to go straight from being an assistant at Dartmouth to be at Kentucky. And the 13 years I've been here has been incredible. I met with a recruit the other day, and I think the number in regards to facility upgrades, both on campus and athletics, is over $1 billion in the last 11 or 12 years. So it's been very, very exciting. It's been exciting to be able to continue, develop, and grow the men's soccer program here at Kentucky. And we've had some really good years, and hopefully we have many, many years ahead of us. But no, it's, you know, to be able to be an SEC school that has men's soccer, there's only 2 of us, South Carolina and Kentucky. And I think that anyone that knows anything about the SEC, you know, it's the absolute top of the pyramid in regards to how you treat the athletes, how the facilities are, what kind of equipment deal you have, like on my chest and all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really cool where we have a fair amount of internationals on our roster. And when you're having them, you're kind of showing them facilities, or even when you're having some MLS Next Pro kids that are coming to campus and they just can't believe the training facility. They can't believe the stadium. So it's something that was very important to me as I was looking to move from an assistant to a head coach. Is I wanted to go somewhere where I felt like the administration backed the ambition of the coaching staff and of the players. And I think that some places that's easier than others, being a male Olympic sport with Title IX and funding and all that kind of stuff. But we're incredibly fortunate to have a wonderful university president here in Dr. Capilouto, and one of the best ADs in the country, and Mitch Barnhart. And they do everything they can for all the sports to be nationally competitive, and we've been one of the beneficiaries of that. So it's been an incredible ride these 13 years, and I'm very, very excited over the next 10.
That sounds great. Sounds like a great place to be, Johan. As we've discussed before, so you mentioned that you've been there 13 seasons. I guess quite a long time. Not still a youngster relatively, but over those years, then what would you say are the main changes that have taken place during your tenure, and how has that impacted on your role?
Yeah, so again, I have two kids. Gavin is a freshman at IU, unfortunately, but I'm very, very proud of him. It's a very good business school, and he's very happy there. And then I have a daughter who's in 8th grade. But one of my standard dad jokes that they always think is so corny is that when I got the Kentucky job, I had a full head of hair and no wrinkles, and that is not the case anymore. So it has been an amazing 13 years, but it's a lot of work, and again, in those 13 years, the transformation and the rules and the changes in the NCAA has been, if you would have asked me 13 years, I would have never. So I think it's challenging. The landscape is challenging, but it's also, you can either look at it as an opportunity or as an excuse. And I think that we have core values here, and one of our core values is problem solver. So when they change the rules, when they make it easier or harder to transfer, it's just an opportunity for us to look at, okay, what are we doing and what can we do better to make sure that we get and we keep getting some of the best players in the country to come to us. So again, I with all the legal stuff that's going on right now, that's hopefully going to be settled next April or so. But that's, of course, way above my level. But it has been incredibly dynamic. 10 years, 5 years, and we're not sure where we're going to land. But again, being at Kentucky, I know that no matter where we land, the administration are going to do the best that they can for all the programs to stay nationally relevant.
Sure. And I guess just looking at the last 2 or 3 years in particular, and some of those changes, I mean, the transfer portal would seem to be something that's having a major impact on recruitment. I guess NIL, you've got changing in scholarship.
Yeah.
Rotas as well. What are some of the kind of key changes you would kind of highlight in recent times?
Yeah, I think that the transfer portal is, again, a complete game changer. For it didn't used to be that players could leave. They'd had to get the approval of the staff that they were leaving from, and if not, they would have to sit for a year. And so I'm all for player possibilities, freedom. I do think that as a society, there is value in making a commitment and seeing that commitment through. And that I think that one of the things that my guys hate hearing, because I say it all the time, but if it was easy, everyone would do it. And I do think that some of these changes have maybe enabled some people that should stay and fight to take the easy way out. And then I don't quite know how successful they've been wherever they're going to. So, I think everyone makes mistakes. No one is perfect. And if for whatever reason it's not a good fit, then you should definitely have the option of being able to find a new home. But at the same time, I think that you have to be really thoughtful of, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, but, again, like, you pick a school because even if you didn't play, you would still see yourself going there. And you pick a school that has a major that you want to study. You pick a school that fits the academic profile that you are. So whenever you're done playing, if that's 10, 15 years from now, again, that degree is still going to be valuable for you and set you up for the rest of your life. So I think that the transfer portal has been a big change for sure, in which has made the recruiting cycle even more dynamic. And where it used to be that you'd have to bring a player in and then maybe develop 1, 2, 3 years. Now you can do a grad transfer, you can do a sophomore. So I think, again, depending upon what you're looking for and what needs you have, I think you have a lot more possibilities. But I still think that there are my assistants, we have very thorough conversations about any potential transfer that we're looking at, because, again, what is the reason for them leaving where they are?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
And in regards to the name, image, likeness, that's another thing where, as a male Olympic sport, maybe it's not quite as crazy as in basketball and football. And so I think for us, we're not to the point where it's life-changing money. So if it's not life-changing money, but you have the opportunity to go somewhere that could be a life-changing decision, that's more what we are trying to communicate, is that we're an incredibly good academic school. We are incredibly fortunate to be one of 2 SEC schools that have men's soccer. So if you're looking at the highest level on both sides, academics and athletics, then we can be a good fit for you. Now, I don't think that $10,000 one way or another should sway that decision, but that's of course up to the prospect and his family. And again, I'm someone that came over from a blue collar family in Sweden, and having a big scholarship was important to me. But I don't think that the numbers that we're dealing with right now in men's soccer aren't quite to the level where, again, if you have 2 or 3 really good options, that $10,000, does that really sway you?
Sure. Yeah, that's good advice. So I suppose on the webinar this evening, we've got a kind of mixed audience. Some, as I said at the start of their journey, some preparing to go out next year's. And I suppose one of the golden nuggets people are looking for is the kind of the best piece of advice that you would give someone preparing for life as a college soccer player. Yeah. What would that be?
So I think there's 2. The one thing, of course, money matters, and you should try to make sure that wherever you go, that's a decision that you can live with financially. I know that depending on where you're coming from, it might be easier or not so easy to get student loans. But I think, again, when I first moved over in 1997, which I'm assuming most of the people on this stream weren't born at that point, but so I thought maybe all the Division I schools were the same, or they were the same athletically, they were the same academically, and that's not at all the case. So I think that you need to make sure that you do your research in regards to, is the scholarship worth where you're deciding to get your degree from? And then the other thing is that I would say, like I said earlier, is like, if you would take a career-ending injury, would you stay at the institution? Because I think you have to find a way to find a team that you like to be part of. Like it's similar values and similar goals. You have to find a staff that you think is going to help you develop, and people that you feel is going to be honest and do what's best for you and the team. But then you also have to find a support system and a school that, okay, even if I wasn't playing, I would still want to stay here and to get my degree from here. Those would be the 2 pieces of advice that I would give as you're navigating this, depending on how many options you have or don't have.
Sure. No, that's great. Very helpful. So I guess when it comes to recruiting players, then you've obviously got your own coaching philosophy. You've got a team behind you. What typically would be the attributes you're looking for in a new recruit?
Yeah, you were kind enough to send me the questions before, so I had a little bit of time to think about it. But I think, again, that's 3 things. So skill, being a good soccer player is going to be important. Then I think, again, it depends on what kind of coach are you, what kind of program do you run, what kind of players do you look for. The 4 core values that we recruit into is selfless, humble, discipline, and problem solver. So when we're looking at players, do we see someone that is willing to do whatever the team needs? Do we see someone that is a positive force, a leader, someone that's trying to make sure that their team gets the result that they want? Do we see someone that has a thick skin that can maybe, 2 or 3 things, it doesn't go their way, but they're now actively trying to figure out, okay, how can I find an opening to score a goal? How can I make sure that this forward that I'm working against doesn't get another chance? Those are things that we work all the time. And as we're looking at tape, and we're very fortunate, again, being in Kentucky, where I travel a lot in the offseason because I want to watch players play live, because I don't think there's any substitute, whether that's at a showcase or watching them play for their club. So again, I think that you have to be a good player, but here you also have to be a really good person, and you have to be a team first player. If you're not that, I'm going to really struggle to coach you. You're not going to enjoy the time here. So you're better off finding somewhere else. And then value. We have right now we have 9.9 scholarships in Division I. That is about to change, but it hasn't been fully implemented yet. And I think every school is going to have to decide how far do they want to then push the boat out in regards to increasing those. But I saw a stat, there's 3 teams that have made a Sweet 16 or a second round of the tournament since 2018. It's us, IU, and Georgetown. So if you're looking for consistency over the last 5 or 6 years, we're one of 3 teams that have made it that far. And I think a big reason for why we have done that is because we've been really good in regards to managing our money. So again, value for me is incredibly important, where maybe it's going to take me 1 more seasons to develop you, but if you can then fit what we have available, that makes a lot more sense, because once you've spent the 9.9, there's no going over the way the rules are right now. They're going to change next year, very likely, but if you're going with 9.9, there's going to be a new number, and then that has to be the number that you manage. But I do think it's skill, core values, and then value. So if you can, if you can get a second job, if you can find a way for your family to contribute a little bit, if maybe you can find a way to work on campus, if you're an international student, or if you're a domestic student, if you're a US-based student, maybe you can work in the summer or to work off campus in the off season to, again, find a way to stretch that budget a little bit.
Yeah. And how your own teams or your own programs recruiting process, you've obviously got your assistant coaches and guys around you. Maybe just explain to the viewers how that process works and how you go about it.
That's too funny. I thought you said you were going to explain it. So I was like, okay, I can take a drink. So I'm, again, we are very well resourced here. I have a full-time director of operation and I have 3 full-time assistants. So I can't send my director of operations, but the 3 assistants can be on the road. So what the 3 assistants do is that they do a lot of the sorting out. They do a lot of the, okay, this is where we should focus our attention. I have a really, really good associate head coach, Ryan Sincan, and then 2 very good assistants in Ryan Hewlings and Stanton Smith. And they are constantly out looking at players. They are constantly looking online. They're looking at the transfer portal. And then we're condensing down a very, very long list to, okay, these are the ones that I need to see live. These are the ones that I need to see a video of. And then after that, then we go down to, okay, who are the ones that we want to get onto campus? The cool thing about Kentucky is that there are lots of places where maybe you don't want to get them on campus, or if you're going to get them on campus, don't show those 2 things. Don't show our practice facility. Don't show our weight room. Don't show the nutrition room, right? We have absolute state-of-the-art facilities here. So if it is a top-level recruit for us and we can make it work with the budget, we want them to come visit, because we know that after they visited, they're going to feel even better about where Kentucky stands on their list of potential schools to play for.
Yeah. And you're obviously an international yourself. You came over from Sweden, played a very high level in Sweden as a youth. What's the current kind of makeup of your roster and the balance, I guess, between US players and international? Is that something that changes typically, or you try and maintain the similar balance?
No, I think it's a very fluid number. Again, since you sent me the questions before, 12 out of 26 are internationals for us. And that's counting 1 Canadian, whether you want to see them as international or not. But so I think, again, I actually have to think about it, because for me, they're just Kentucky players. And whether you're coming from Argentina, Norway, Denmark, or Max Miller, who's from Lexington, Kentucky, and who's one of our best players, it doesn't matter. For us, it's just about finding the best players possible. And again, filling the holes that we have through graduation. Or again, I think it's 12 players that we've had turn pro over the last 2 years. So again, players either leave because they graduate and they used up their eligibility, or they have a professional contract or an opportunity that it makes sense to leave from. So the churn as you get better is greater, just because, again, there's more people that are aware of you. There's more teams and agents that come and look, but that's also just part of the process. And again, it's an opportunity to get better and to get better at problem solving versus just like, okay, this is too hard, I can't figure this out. But does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. One of the things that comes up when we're speaking to players a lot is finding that balance between playing and studying. Obviously, if you're coming out from an academy, you're already doing it. If you're coming from school, you're doing it. Just maybe explain how difficult you see that, and how much support that the players get to achieve that correct balance? I guess particularly at this time of year where the games are very frequent.
Yeah. No, so I was not a good student. I was a quite terrible student through high school. I'm from a blue collar family. My father was an electrician. My mother was a secretary. Going to university was not something that was really thought of. So I wish I would have worked harder and understood the value of good academics and getting good grades in high school. But I was fortunate enough to figure out a way to still come over here. And once I was here, once I got to study things that I wanted to study, I have a bachelor's in finance and an MBA with a finance focus. It was a game changer for me. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I got really, really good grades. It was not something that was a chore. So I say to people all the time, the best 4 years of my life was being a college student athlete, because to be able to play at a very, very high level, but at the same time working on getting your degree, learning new things, feeling like you're evolving as a human being is an unbelievably cool place to be. So it is challenging. It is going to be challenging. It's going to be more challenging if maybe the language is your second language and you're not a native English speaking, whether it's with a heavy Scottish or English accent, or you're from the southern US. But again, I think now with Google Translate and all that kind of stuff, my computer is stacked on top of a Swedish English and English Swedish dictionary, because back in the day, that's how I had to do my homework. So I had a word I didn't know, I had to find it, I had to understand it, and then take it from there. So I had people that would do psychology homework that would take 5 minutes. It would take me 2 hours. But again, it's the why are you here and how important is it for you to get your degree. So it's going to be challenging. I think it's easier now with technology. And again, every school does it differently. We have something called CATS, which is an academic support system for all the student athletes at Kentucky. So we have a dedicated person that deals with all of our athletes. He helps them set their schedule. We pay for tutors, and tutoring is completely free, no matter how big your scholarship is on. So for all of our freshmen incoming guys, they have 10 hours of study hall every week. And if we're traveling a lot, that gets reduced, but on average, they have to do study hall, and where they go into CATS and they make sure that they get their work done. And when they're down there, that's also then when we provide them free tutoring. So it sounds like, I'm sure there's some people on this stream that are like, oof, that sounds like a lot. But again, if you have 3 or 4 tutors and you meet 1 or 2 of them twice a week, that's nothing at all. And the rule that we have here is that once you get a 3.0 GPA out of a 4, then you don't have to have study hall anymore. So it's just one of those incentives of making sure that you're staying well above the line to be eligible from an NCAA point of view, but also that once you are done playing, whether it's after you graduate or even if you have a pro career, having a good GPA is going to set you apart. And it's going to, at some point, it's going to come down to you and another job candidate, and he's sitting with a 2.5 and you have a 3.4. And if you're a student athlete and you're able to get a 3.4, any employer in this country is going to understand how hard of a worker you are and how big of an asset you can be to that company.
And you yourself used your degree initially when you came out of university, went into investment banking.
Yep.
I guess that was something that you worked particularly hard to get, and you had that choice of career at the end of it. We often describe it as the best of both worlds, but you've obviously done the best of both worlds to some degree as well.
Yeah. No, I like numbers. I think investing and that's a challenge, the different challenge than coaching. But again, I think it's also competition, where you're going to be working for a company that's amongst many companies that are competing for investors' money or whatever. So it was something that appealed to me. I did it for 7 years. I really enjoyed the first couple of years, and then unfortunately, I didn't quite enjoy the last years as much. And then also, some of these people on here, they might want to go on and do their MBA. And as I was doing my MBA at night, it was a lot of talking about, if you can somehow find a way to have your passion be your job, then that might be a path that you're going to be a lot happier with when you retire, when you're at the end of your working career. So I kept thinking about that. That's also when Gavin, my oldest, was born. And as you know, as you become a father, I think again, you're kind of looking at who do I want my kids to see and who do I want to be for them. So I decided that finance was okay, but it wasn't my true passion. And I was very fortunate that the coach that I played for, Coach Cook, who's now at Penn State, who's going to do one of these, I guess, later and do a much better job because he's a lot more well-spoken than I am. But, you know, he was kind of poking around and wanted to see if I wanted to come up and be his assistant. And that's a decision that I've never regretted. I was those 5 seasons with Jeff were very rewarding, very, very useful as I was preparing to be a head coach. And there are few people better in the business than Coach Cook.
No, it sounds like it. Everyone speaks very highly of him. Another question that comes up a lot from the athlete's perspective, you maybe describe a typical day in the life of a soccer player at D1 level.
Yeah. So here, there's 200 majors at University of Kentucky. We have well north of 30,000 students. So the only major that I've found is a challenge for any of our players is nursing. So you can even start your working towards being a doctor or an attorney, but that you're not quite as involved being at the hospital at that point. So nursing is the only, so there's 199 majors you can do at Kentucky. Nursing is a tough one just because by the time you're a junior, you're going to be at the hospital so much that you're not going to be able to train. So what we do is in the fall, we train in the afternoon. And then in the winter and the spring, when you come back after Christmas break, we train in the morning. So we train at 3:00 during the week. So you have to be up on the field at 2:45, so 15 minutes before. And then we normally train, depending upon, again, like this is a 2-game week, then we're probably just going to train for an hour. And if it's a week where we only have 1 game, maybe we'll throw in 2 sessions that it's 90 minutes or so. So that's about the time that you have. So in the fall, you do school in the morning, then you get lunch and you get ready for training, you come in for treatment, and then we train. And then you're probably going to do some studying, whether it's in study hall or if you have a tutor or whatever it is that you're preparing for the next day. And then the complete opposite when you come back in January. I'm a huge believer in sleep and how important it is to go to get enough sleep. And of course, it's easy to say, well, you know, this 19-year-old should just go to bed at 10 o'clock. I think there's a lot of research in regards to how brains develop and how they work, where they're going to have a really hard time being asleep before midnight. So if I'm going to train at 6 a.m., I know that I'm only giving them 5 or 6 hours of sleep. And if I'm going to do that over 4 months, that's playing with fire. So I don't think that's a smart decision. So we train at 9:30. So they can get up, they can have breakfast, and then we will train. And again, we're very fortunate here. We have a full field indoors on Astro. And then when the grass is ready, we can go outside in March if we want to. So, and then after training, that's when they will then go and do classes in the afternoon in the winter and spring.
And what would you say from your side as a head coach, the kind of split between the work that you're doing with the team on the technical side, and then maybe the more game management than maybe some of the mental health side that obviously people talk about a lot now?
Yeah. No, I think connection is incredibly important. If it's a one thing that I feel like I'm constantly failing in, that I should do more in, is finding time to meet and finding time to talk. But it is incredibly challenging where you're meeting to make sure that the week is planned out. You meet the day of in the morning to make sure that there are no new injuries or anything that you have to change in regards to the practice plan. And then, of course, recruiting and whatever else is going on in regards to managing the program. But I think that the one thing that I need to do more of, and that we're all trying to do more of, I believe, is meeting with the student athletes on a regular basis and making sure that if they're being dropped, if they're maybe seeing less time off the bench, if they're not traveling, you know, what is the reason and what do they need to do to make sure that they stay the course and that they understand that we see great value in them and we see a great path for them in regards to playing. But it's just, there's a couple of things that need to be done better. So that is, I always bring up in Sweden in the 90s, what they did was they took the 75 best players and they sent them to 3 different high schools. So I moved away from my hometown when I was 16, and I did 10, 11, and 12th grade in a different town. And we had soccer on the schedule every morning, and then we trained with the club in the afternoon. And I believe in those 3 years, I only had one conversation with a coach that wasn't specific to soccer. And I felt like they really did us a disservice because, again, there we are, young men trying to navigate life, trying to figure some things out. And again, my players are my kids too. Of course, they have biological parents, they have parents somewhere, but some of them are really far away. And I want to make sure that they, both the players and the parents, that they feel like we are doing everything we can to invest in them to make sure that they have success both as players and as students.
And that takes us back a little bit to the recruitment process. So you're really looking for players that you and the rest of the team and the coaching staff can connect with. So personality must play a bit of a role in that, as well as clearly the talent.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and time. That, you know, again, for a lot of the internationals, that we have 2.5 weeks of preseason. It's insanity. So, you know, every program, I believe, sends a summer conditioning manual out to their athletes. So they have to do a lot of the conditioning work before we actually get to see them, because we can't get them up to speed in 2.5 weeks. But then still in 2.5 weeks, if you have a lot of new players and you're going to go through the playbook and you're going to play a couple of scrimmages and you're going to break down the video, there is a lot of that still. So, you know, I think, again, it's a challenging process, but it's something that we work on constantly.
Okay, moving on to your own career, what would you say are your best moments, the highlights, maybe as your playing career and also your coaching career so far, Johan?
Yeah. Two things that I would bring up is that when I was hired, I believe it was 8 seasons that Kentucky hadn't made the NCAA tournament. So we made the NCAA tournament my first year. And that was really, really cool, with lots of players that were here before I took over to be able to help them to kind of push through and get to that next level, and to be in that room when we get announced as an at-large bid. That was a very, very special experience, and something that I'm really going to always think back to as regard as that was one of my top moments. And the other one is, I have 3 big posters in my office here. And the first one is from the 2015 class, where we won Conference USA for the first time. The Kentucky was in the MAC before, and they had a lot of success. I think it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. But when I took over, we hadn't won Conference USA yet. So in 2015, that was the first time we won the conference title. And to be able to win the title at home, and we had fireworks, there was confetti, there was a big banner that came down. Again, with that group of guys that a lot of them had been there for 3 years. They came in as freshmen in 13. We were close to winning it in 14. We lost on the last game of the year to not win the title, to then be able to bring that whole group back and to win the title in 15. That was a really cool experience as well. And then 18, we were the number 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. That was really cool. And then in 22, we were the number 1 seed in the tournament. So both of those, I think, were really good as well. But 12 was the first time I made the NCAA tournament as a head coach at Kentucky, and it was the first time in 8 years that we made it. And then 15 was the first time we won the league. That was really special as well.
Yeah, some great achievements there. We obviously touched at the start upon your time at Dartmouth, and you've mentioned Jeff Cook and working under him. But what would you say from your 5 seasons at Dartmouth? Obviously very different, being Ivy League, and
yeah.
I guess much more academic focus there. The kind of big differences between being part of an Ivy League program as a player and somewhere like yourself at Kentucky now.
Yeah. I'm going to have to be very careful, because this seems like it's going to be a disaster, that someone's going to see this and I'm going to get yelled at for all kinds of reasons. So I've been here for 13 years. So it's been a long, long time. Chase Wildman, who was an assistant for me here and associate head coach, is now the head coach at Brown. So maybe we can get him on at some point so he can explain a little more about the Ivy League. But I would say that when I was an assistant at Dartmouth, the difference between those student athletes and the student athletes that I have here is that most of the student athletes at Dartmouth came to get the Dartmouth degree. And part of the reason to why we're able to get a lot of good players to come here is because they want a Kentucky degree, but they also come here because they clearly want to play at the next level. And they see Kentucky as being one of the best paths to get a pro contract after they're done with college. So I would say that is a little bit of a difference in regards to that. The Dartmouth students were more there to get the Dartmouth degree. And here, yes, we're getting the degree, but you're going to play for 2 years, go pro, and then finish your degree online, or even come back after you finish, because we will still honor your scholarship once you're done playing. Sure. And then the one I'm a little iffy about is that, I think that it seems like a lot of the facilities in the Ivy League have been upgraded. But again, I think that if you look at what sets the top 20 schools apart in the country, I would say in general is the facilities, their stadiums, their practice facilities, the gyms, all that kind of stuff. And of course, that has a lot to do with basketball and football. But those would be the two that I feel I'm not going to get yelled at too much for saying.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. And a final question from me. We've got a couple of questions from the audience that we'll try and quickly go through. I know you're on a tight schedule. The sort of progress then after college, going into the professional game, are you seeing more and more players coming through at your program's level that want to play pro, either MLS or heading back across to Europe? Is that a trend?
Yeah, for sure. And again, going back to the value piece, where once you go to college, you're almost, like a free agent, right? So coming out of college, there's no club that's really owning your rights. There's no one that having to, buy you from University of Kentucky. So I think it's easier to find a contract, because the only money that the club is spending is that they're spending that on your salary. So, and again, the level of the quality of play in college soccer has gone up tremendously over the last 10 or 15 years. So there are players playing all over the world that have just, finished or recently finished college. So agents and clubs are constantly looking for ways to get deeper into this market. So I think, again, at a top 20 school like Kentucky, the players that we have here, they came here because they want to get a degree from a really good academic institution, but also they want help, and they feel like being at such a high level school, it's going to help them in regards to being noticed and getting access to agents and schools as they're finished playing.
Sure. Okay, that's great. Thanks for taking the time to go through all the set questions we've given you. I'm just kind of going through a few of the questions that are coming in that might be relevant for you. One question just around player development. Someone's just asking how you approach player development both on and off the pitch.
Yeah. So I think that, again, if you go back to problem solver being one of our core values, I think that's a huge one in regards to what I love about this sport is that I can't call a timeout and draw up a play. It's on the players to solve it during the game. And yes, we can talk at halftime and I can try to yell from the sidelines, but you need really smart, you need really cerebral players to be successful. So a lot of the stuff that we do in training is to ask you questions to see if we can solve the problems and find out a way to take the most dangerous away. And if we're talking about defending, and if we're talking about attacking, it's what's the smartest way to advance the ball? Should we keep it? Or, we have numbers up where we should really go for this. Again, their center back has overplayed the fullback, so we should be looking to get in between the center backs and those kinds of things. So I think we play tons of possession games. We play tons of structured tactical games. We try to ask as many questions as possible in training so that we get to a point where they feel like the game is actually easier than training. But if you're not training at 100%, if you're not really pushing and training, I think it's incredibly hard to be successful on the game field.
That's good. It's good advice. And one final question. I know we've got lots of questions, and we'll try and get back to some of you with answers through a kind of follow-up email, because I know there'll be some that aren't necessarily relevant for Johan to be answering, but would be relevant for us. But one again that comes up quite a lot for your kind of tips for an initial call with a coach. So from a player that's maybe been approached, how would you kind of advise someone to go about preparing for a call with a coach?
I think you need to do a little bit of research. Again, going back to that, you want to find a place that you feel is a good fit for you. And so you have to then do research. And so I would go on the website. I would make sure that I look at the facilities. I would scan the bios, especially of the head coach. I would look at, okay, where are the other players from? What are their ages? How many are they losing the next year? And those kinds of things. So that would be what I would look at. And then again, it's, what are your strengths? If you're an international, why are you wanting to come over? I think there's a lot of people that look to come over because it's an adventure, and that they're not quite understanding the level of commitment it takes to play at this level. And then, of course, also then doing the academic work that's required to stay eligible. So it is, again, it's the best 4 years of my life, but it's also incredibly challenging, and you got to be up for that challenge. So I would say that make sure that you do your research and you have a couple of questions about the program and about the coach, so he feels like you're spending energy and effort of doing your part.
That's great. Again, great advice, and very much appreciate your time this evening, Johan. I know you've got some child commitments and of soccer.
I have
your own family.
I have a nasty centre back I got to go pick up from practice, and she'll yell at me if I'm not on time. So again, I really appreciate this. It was nice to spend some time together, and hopefully we get some questions answered.
That's great. We'd like to wish you best of luck with the game in Florida on Wednesday. Hope you guys get the win this week.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Johan. Thanks, everyone.